Hey everybody, I'll tell you what, welcome to LSO Tips and Techniques. I'll tell you, we have got a great day out here today. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set up on this reef, and basically we're gonna fish the windward side. There's a 6-foot hump right in back of us right here. And right now we're gonna position the boat in about 9 foot. So I should have no problem reaching back to that high spot right there. And again, anytime that wind is blowing like it is today, them fish are gonna gravitate right up to the very tops of these points, and always work the windward side. So important, because them aggressive fish are gonna move right up on top. This time what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a jig and just a crawler, or a jig and a leech, and I'm gonna pitch back and start working these spots. I'm gonna use the spot lock on the trolling motor instead of anchoring us down. So if I wanna move over 10, 15, 30 feet, all I gotta do is hit a button and away I go. Game on. Finally. Hey, I'll tell you what, everybody. Definitely the fish are stacked back there. Nice walleye right there. And basically what I was doing is I just anchored up with the spot lock right there and just pitching that jig back real slow, working it really slow. You know, the first cast, I definitely had another one right there. But, you know, the key to coming out and being successful at catching fish on the rocks are definitely location. The stronger the wind is, the higher these fish come up. Right now we've got a really stiff east wind, and I'll tell you what, the fish are stacked on this 3-foot hump right behind me. 2 casts, missed one the first time, got one on the second. I'm loving it. Basically the key is to this is that when you have a lot of wind, and right now I'm positioned at that high spot is exactly right in back of us, just far enough so I can cast back. I like to cast straight back because I want to be able to control that bait. And if I cast off to the side, the wind is going to grab it when it's this strong and make a bow of my line, and it's going to pull that jig faster than I want it to slide. Nice job, Lance. Got our good friend Lightning Lance with us, and he's got himself a drum, right? There's nothing wrong with catching them. If this is a sheephead, it's time to move to another spot. Not that, you know, the great part is that sheephead and the walleyes do coexist together for sure, but what do you got there? And if you got a sheephead, we're out of here. You do? All right, no, nice job. Hey, I'll tell you what, you know, that is the great part. We're both casting jigs straight back. And the reason, again, why we're casting straight back is to be able to control the bait right there. But Lance is definitely jigging a little bit more aggressively. I'm just slowly sliding the bait along the bottom where he's giving it a little bit of pop. And a lot of times that is the key. When you're out here, it always seems like the rougher it is, obviously the more turbulence that's in the water, the more action that you want to give that bait. So give that jig that more pop. Gave it a little bit more pop, and I do believe I have the right flavor. At least I think I do. Yep, I do. There it is. You know, that is the cool part too. Here we go. Boy, this system has got a lot of these 12, 13-inch walleyes in it right there. Casting 1/8 ounce jigs, using 6-pound test mono. For this kind of fishing, I very seldom use any kind of super braid. I like that stretch in the line, especially on the walleyes, because what happens when they grab it, I'll actually pull them a little ways before I set the hook. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is especially on walleyes when you're casting or you're drifting, is basically you're setting the hook too soon. Let them fish load up on it. That's why I like to use the rods that have real soft tips on them, fast action. Use a lot of mono so you have that stretch. The times where I'm going to use a super braid is when I'm pulling like rigs, you know, slow death. I'm pulling, you know, spinners. I'm casting cranks where I want to get the distance. When I'm pulling something, I want to be able to cut that water easily. That's the difference. But when I'm either drifting or casting for walleyes, I typically with live bait like to have monofilament. Just, it seems like 6 pound works about the best. The key is too, you got to remember when you're pitching rocks, especially nowadays, we have so many zebra mussels that you don't want to use a jig that's too heavy, but you want to use a jig that's heavy enough that you got to be able to control that bait. But the problem is if you use a jig that is too heavy, you're constantly grinding into the rocks. And what's going to happen, the zebra mussels are so thick on these rocks that it's constantly cutting your line. So again, you want to use a jig, and really what determines on the weight of the jig that you're going to use really determines on the depth of water that you're fishing. And the other part is how much wind there is, because the more wind you get, the more turbulence you get, and you got that the wind is lifting your line, and obviously the waves are going to be bigger. So really, again, it comes down to a control factor. You've got to be able to control that bait for sure. Feels actually pretty big. It's a big fish. Might be a nutter, Lance.
He's actually got one in the boat, huh?
Yep, I'll tell you what. Feels like definitely a nice fish, Lance. Oh, nice walleye. Hey, hey, hey.
There you go.
That's what you like, buddy. Hey, that is absolutely awesome. Again, you know, that's kind of the cool part too about using the spot lock features on these trolling motors, is that all you got to do is jog over, you know, 15, 20, 30 feet. In that time, a couple things I did differently. We were pitching up really shallow, like 2.5 to 3 feet, but the wind kind of calmed down, and it took me about 15 minutes to realize, after catching about 20 sheephead, that the walleyes definitely moved. Now I moved us to a little bit deeper, and now we're basically, you know, casting at we're basically casting about 5-6 foot. So I kind of kept us sliding down, and all of a sudden I missed one, and Lance missed one. We hit the spot lock, and hey, there you go. You know, and that is a nice walleye. No matter where you're fishing, that is absolutely great walleye. About 18 inches. That's about as big as we keep them out here. This system, again, doesn't have any size limit. It's a 3-fish limit. So we're very conservative on what we catch and keep out here. We definitely let them bigger fish go, but that's definitely a nice fish. Let me show you the jig that I was using too, because I did switch jigs. I'm gonna put this one in the live well, Lance.
Yep.
I'm keeping that baby. A little walleye for dinner tonight, and I don't keep a lot of fish. You know, I'm lucky enough we get to fish every day, kind of like the lightning here. So if we're gonna have fish, they're gonna be fresh. But what I was doing, I basically switched up on my jig, and I went to a slow poke jig, and I just like the way this jig actually goes across the water, and you can see that's exactly how it would lay on the bottom, where that body, the back of the jig, is standing way up. It allows you to get through a lot of these bigger rocks, and the huge thing is about the system now is that there's so many zebra mussels. So that's definitely key, having a nice right jig. What do you got there, buddy?
Another goat.
Another goat, huh? Well, typically you're the guy that is catching the walleye, and I'm catching the goat, but tonight's a little bit different, at least right now. Let's talk a little bit too about the crawler. I typically myself on most days like to use the head of the crawler more, and when I'm using a jig like this, basically what I'm doing is I'm threading that crawler on, and it's coming right off the bend of the hook right there. Again, with this, what happens when I'm lifting up like this, real slow like this, and if I get way up here and I feel that fish on there, I quick wind down and I give, oh, just like that. Oh, I missed him. I give it about a half a pull, and what happens is you put that right pressure on that fish. He actually, instead of dropping it, like if you had super braid, there's going to be too much pressure, and most of the time they're going to drop it. With mono, there's enough stretch there, you're pulling back and the pressure's just right. The fish thinks the bait's getting away from them, and they actually lunge up on it. It works out perfect. Hey, make sure everybody, if you want to see some other type of videos from us, make sure you comment down below. We love to hear your comments. We love to have your involvement. You know, and again, you guys can either check us out on YouTube or make sure you check out our Facebook too. We do a lot of live feeds too. Remember, like I always say, hey, it's a great day to be alive.